What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about season 2 of Jurassic World Chaos Theory, just coming about 5 months after the release of the first season. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with what this show is all about, maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it, over the course of the last 2 years you may have seen me drop some reviews for a show called Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, which took place during the events of the Jurassic World films and focused on a group of kids that were stranded at Jurassic World after the events of the first movie. They just were kind of like left behind in all of the madness. They were part of a early program of a summer camp that they were going to have at Jurassic World, and that show ran for I believe 5 or 6 seasons. I covered every season as they came out, and it seemed like it was over. It focused on these kids that eventually would be known as the Nublar 6, who eventually do survive their time on Jurassic World. That show was connected to all of the movies in different ways, with certain characters introduced in from the movies, sometimes played by the actors from the movies, in a lot of ways feeling very similar to what like the Star Wars shows do with something like the Clone Wars or Rebels, where it's kind of like, you know, a secondary piece of storytelling that's attached to the movies in its own way. It's a little bit sillier and a little bit more for kids, but definitely a good time, and I really enjoyed my run with Camp Cretaceous as time went on. Well, earlier this year we got a new trailer for an animated show called Chaos Theory, and at the very end of that trailer they showed us that we were going to be seeing aged up versions of the Nublar 6 in this new show known as Chaos Theory. So I did a review about almost 5 months ago for that first season here on the channel, and here we are now talking about season 2, dropping with 10 episodes, all of them about 24 minutes a pop. That does include though the opening recap, the intro to the show, and the ending credits. So I would say altogether you probably have 18 to 19 minutes of show once you've actually sat down to watch it all. As of filming this, the episodes dropped on Netflix yesterday, and I sat down throughout the course of the day with my wife and we watched through the entire season. Didn't take us a whole lot of time, honestly. It was a pretty quick watch, but yeah, after sleeping on my thoughts, I wanted to do a video, of course. If you guys have been following this channel, you know I'm a huge fan of the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World films. Not all of them are my favorite, but it's just a world I grew up loving, and I still love the films and a lot of the world of the Jurassic Park stuff to this day. And something I've said about these animated shows with Camp Cretaceous and now Chaos Theory is I honestly think that the story across these two shows has been more exciting to watch through than the Jurassic World films that we got. Don't get me wrong, I actually really enjoy the first Jurassic World with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, but I did find that the stories in the second one that they did and the third one, Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, weren't as good as I was hoping that they would be. And I think that the Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory has actually created a fairly compelling character story with all these characters that we're following along, while connecting themselves to the events of the Jurassic World films and having some nice cameos from those characters that I mentioned before. Now, for the sake of this video, since the season did just drop, I am going to kind of steer clear of spoilers, but I'm going to assume if you clicked on this, you've at least seen the first season. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we left off at the end of the last season, give my general thoughts here, and then I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler warning at the end, just to talk about a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning in this season. So at the very end of the last season, we know that the main characters were all on their way trying to find out who this person known as the Broker was. They think that they have something to do with selling dinosaurs. Of course, as we see in the Jurassic World films, we know that is something that is taking place behind the scenes. And so, yeah, these characters are trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes, who it is that this broker is, you know, who's selling these dinosaurs. And there's a part of them that wants to, of course, stay safe and no longer die, but there is also a part of them that is trying to save these dinosaurs and get to the nitty-gritty of what's going on. Now, a big part of the last season, though, was the reveal at the very start of the season that Brooklyn, one of the main characters from the show, who was originally voiced by Jenna Ortega, and this time around and in the last season was voiced by Kirsten Kelly, was actually dead. We found out that one of the main characters from Camp Cretaceous was dead in between the two shows, and so our characters are in a lot more somber place as we move throughout the course of the show, where they're a lot older and they're facing the fact that one of their closest friends, who they survived craziness with, is now dead. But at the very end of that last season, we get a reveal that she was actually alive. And so in the case of this show now, we're picking up knowing that she is alive as an audience, but the other characters do not know she's alive just yet. So over the course of this season, we're picking up where we last left off, where they had kind of helped raid and free some dinosaurs in this kind of cargo like location. This ends up leading to them being on a boat at the very start of this season, the rest of the Nublar 5, and they end up getting onto a boat from this bigger ship and end up actually ending up in Africa, where they meet a brand new character known as Zaina. Now, there isn't a whole lot of information online about all the voice cast for this show just yet when it comes down to this season, which is a little bit unfortunate. There are a lot of things online you can find though pointing that the voice actress who plays Zaina in this show is Anaya Amira. I'm not entirely sure about that because none of that is officially available on IMDb or other sources. It's just other things I've kind of had to read online. There is a Jurassic World wiki of some sort that has very limited information about the character of Zaina, but does point to the direction that Anaya Amira is the one who plays the character. So yeah, they meet this young African girl and her mother, and this young girl ends up helping them along their journey to try to discover who the broker is and get down to the nitty-gritty of what's going on with selling these dinosaurs now in Africa. So they're in a completely different place. Now, amidst all of this going on, we're learning more about Brooklyn. We're getting to see what she's doing on the side as we learn that she's keeping herself hidden through the world, keeping herself dead so that she can actually do her own spy espionage work on the back end to discover who the broker is and also out these people. And so they're essentially working for the same goal, but in two different places, and Brooklyn doesn't even want her closest friends to know that she is in fact alive. And that's really where we kind of propel the initiation of this story. That's where things start to get going, and majority of the show does take place in Africa this time around. Overall, it was great to see the Nublar 6 again. I think this is a really interesting cast of characters. There is still that kind of cringy cheesiness to this show that I think just comes from animated shows from Dreamworks like this that are obviously made for a younger audience. But I do think that the show does a lot to also kind of cater to older Jurassic Park and Jurassic World fans who grew up with the Jurassic franchise and still want to be able to kind of be partaking in that universe. It doesn't feel like it fully dumbs down the story for older fans, but it definitely has its foot very firmly planted in something that's for families and for younger kids. So that's just something to know when you're talking about this show in general. You're going to have to expect some cringiness and some elements that are very much for a younger audience, but the show does have its moments where things get dark. It doesn't necessarily shy away from killing off characters. While it's never incredibly violent or gory, it very much alludes to some dark things that do happen with these dinosaurs. And especially as we get deeper into what's going on with the broker here and learning about the various things that are going on behind the scenes and the various cloning that's happening, that's not all that kind of high tech, and in a lot of ways is kind of putting these dinosaurs in danger. We're seeing experimentation on these dinosaurs, and we're seeing these dinosaurs being held in a way that doesn't really, give them the life that they should have. But of course, it is Jurassic Park, so it's going to of course have a lot of these dinosaurs be the monster in a lot of sequences over the course of the season, which does lead to some pretty fun sequences with our characters running away from and trying to have to fight off various dinosaurs throughout the course of the show. Now, one thing I can say about this show is it only had 10 episodes, and I think that I'm coming at a place with this now where I feel like it's probably easier for them to get these shorter episodes out in a pretty quick amount of time. Like I said, the first season only premiered about 5 months ago, so it's not really like we waited very long for season 2, but I'm at a place now where I feel like I really enjoyed this season. I think plenty happened and they pushed the story forward in a lot of ways, but it also feels like not a whole lot happened. It feels like we uncovered new things. It feels like we got some new character development as time goes on, but the season came and went so fast for me, and just binging it in just a few hours, where I just couldn't help but wish that there was just a little bit more meat on the bone when it came down to the season. By no means was I disappointed in what happened in the season. There's just that part of wanting more, and I guess that's not a bad thing, right? It's never a bad thing for a season to end and for you to be like, I want more. Of course, that's what they want you to have, and hopefully we can, see the next season coming out in just the next few months. Hopefully we don't have to wait too long, but I feel like there's so much story still to be had with this show, and it feels like we just haven't really gotten to the crux of this show just yet. Again, I enjoyed the episodes. I don't think that the time spent in the episodes is wasted. I just think that those episodes go by so quickly, and there's so much story that they're focusing on that it left me wanting more. It left me wanting more conclusions to certain storylines, whereas I feel like the season still leaves things pretty open-ended. And while there are things that our characters uncover, there are revelations that happen over the course of the season. There are reunions between characters that you want to see. see over the course of the season, it also, in the same way, kind of feels like we end this season in a very similar place to where we ended the last season. There is still this sense of uncertainty in what's going on, and you really wonder, you know, what's to come. You know, again, it's a good thing to kind of have the itch for more, but watching the season, I just wish that there was just a little bit more to it. And honestly, I'm at a point now where I would maybe prefer slightly longer episodes or slightly longer seasons, even if it was another extra 4 or 5 episodes in the season. 10 episodes is solid, but if the episodes were ever so slightly longer, I feel like we'd be able to get a little bit more meat on the bone. But I was enjoying my time watching the show though, and you know, once again, the animation I think looks pretty solid. There are moments in the faces of some of these characters that's a little bit goofy, feels very much like Dreamworks made for TV shows, but overall I really enjoyed the animation again, especially when it comes down to the dinosaurs. I enjoyed seeing the various revelations and reunions we have over the course of the show. The new character Xena, I enjoyed her for what she was. I didn't necessarily feel like she was an absolute fit into the rest of the Nublar 6 or the Nublar 5 that we're really focusing on together here throughout the course of this season. She, you know, meshes with everybody pretty well. There are nice little charming moments. She's a harmless character. But there was that part of me that was like, did I really feel like this character was needed outside of her just kind of serving as a guide for our characters, since they're not really familiar with, of course, Africa. And not only are they dealing with dinosaurs over the course of the season, but they're also dealing with African animals that are also dangerous, like lions and hippos. And so I do think that she served a purpose in the season, but I never really felt like her character really serviced more than just that. I didn't really feel like she was super necessary. Hopefully in the next season they'll do more with her and make her a more compelling character to have introduced into the group of the Nublar characters. But I just couldn't help but feel like by the time we got to the end of the season, she was charming, she was harmless, there was nothing to her that was negative for me per se. I just don't know if she really needed to have been an integral part of adding to the story here. And by the time we got to the end of the season, another thing to mention is I found some of the characters to be a little bit frustrating, because we're finding them in a bit of a dark place after the events of the last season. There are characters that learn about secrets throughout the course of the season that we start to kind of unravel as this time goes on, but there's a lot of this secret keeping between the characters that we enjoy. So a lot of the drama at times throughout the course of the season is built upon characters holding secrets from one another, and these things start to eventually come out at times, but it just feels like there's a lot of regurgitating. I'm holding on to this secret, let's have a little awkward moment. Are you sure everything's okay with you? Yeah, everything's fine, only for us to kind of have a similar kind of sense of what's going on episode to episode. Again, I think the episodes do a good job of pushing the story forward with each and every episode. I never felt bored, but there was that element of just feeling like we were regurgitating a couple of things and there was just not enough meat on the bone by the time we got to the end of the season. With all that said though, it was great to be with the Nublar 6 again. I found the show to be entertaining, and again, as you can hear here in my voice, what I really want is just more. I want longer episodes, I want longer seasons. I feel like they could do so much more, and I'm really enjoying the time spent with these characters. It's great to hear that Jurassic World music throughout the course of it as well, and the connections to the bigger universe. And on that note, let's move on now to the little quick spoiler section where I'm going to talk on just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. And the most notable thing to mention is some of my favorite parts of this show, without a doubt, are the connections to the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World universe and some of the other characters that they bring into the mix. And so in this season, we get to learn who the Broker is, who was the behind the scenes antagonist of the first season and is now shown in this season. And that is the character of Soyona Santos, who was actually in Jurassic World Dominion and has even been featured in video games like Jurassic World Evolution 2. And in Jurassic World Dominion, she was played by Dishan Lockman. Now, there is no confirmation, like I said earlier, with Xena, where we don't really know who is the voice actress. If you look on IMDb, Dishan Lockman is not credited for being in this show, but they don't have any voice actress who is credited for playing the character of Soyona Santos in this show. So I'm going to assume it was Dishan Lockman because she looks very much like the actress, but maybe they were just using her likeness and they got another voice actress in. Who knows? There is no confirmation online that I could find as of this time. So if you're watching this after the fact and there has been some confirmation, definitely leave some comments down below and let me know. But I thought it was cool to see a character from the movies appear here and connect us a little bit more to the events of the Jurassic World movies. While she is a pretty throwaway character, to be honest, in Jurassic World Dominion, it is nice that this show is going to do a little bit more to expand upon her character and hopefully give us a little bit more backstory as to learning about the underground world of trading and selling dinosaurs that we see in the Jurassic World movies that ultimately I felt was never explored enough. Now, Brooklyn is in this show, as I mentioned before, and we're learning a little bit more about her spy espionage stuff that she's got going on behind the scenes. And eventually, in order to uncover more, she starts to work with Santos and ends up actually leaving her friends behind at the end of the season to go and work with Santos. Santos has built this trust in her to some degree, and thinks that she's moving on from her friends. But, you know, under the surface, we know that Brooklyn is actually trying to learn everything she can so she can eventually stop this ring of people who are selling and trading dinosaurs 110%. So she's working against the broker, but working with her. So in doing so, once her friends actually learn that she is alive, she eventually has to leave them behind and kind of break their hearts once again, as they've just uncovered the fact that she was alive. There are more pieces about spoiler things I could bring up here, but those are the main things I wanted to mention in terms of, you know, for anybody who's already seen the show. Overall, I think it leaves us in an interesting place with where season 3 can kind of pop in here. I look forward to learning more about Brooklyn and Santos and what's going on with the broker and the, you know, undercover world, or underground world, I should say, of the dinosaur trade and selling. I think there's some really interesting storytelling to do there. But I am very curious to see what they're going to do with the rest of our characters who have been left in Africa. Where do we take it from here? They already know that Brooklyn is alive now. There is some animosity amongst the crew because we learned earlier in the season that Ben was the first one to kind of get a hint that Brooklyn was possibly still alive, and he chose not to tell the rest of the group. So I think we are going to have some drama between the characters moving into season 3. But all in all, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with season 3. The only thing I wanted out of this season was more, and I guess that's not a bad thing. I just wish that a little bit more had happened in the grand kind of scheme of it. But hopefully with the next season, it'll kind of, you know, quench that thirst, so to speak, and we'll be talking a little bit more positively about the story that plays out there. Overall, though, I am a fan of this show, and I look forward to seeing more of it. I just wish that the episodes and the seasons were longer, but, you know, I guess that's you get what you get, and you can't really complain too much. But a big thanks to you guys for watching. If you're a fan of the Jurassic World animated shows, leave some comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on the show, on this season, whatever the case may be, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.